Okay, and do I have audio? I'm good? Okay, good.
Leslie, does it make sense that we jump in? I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening to all of you. It's a really delight to see right now that we've been joined by over 60 of you who are spending a Tuesday evening with us, a very balmy, warm, sort of summer East Bay evening. We're really glad that you're going to spend the next 90 minutes with many members of the school district. My name is Brent Stevens. I'm a superintendent of Berkeley Unified School District. The purpose of tonight's gathering, online gathering, is to create a special space for African-American families here in Berkeley Unified, both to be able to hear directly from me and other key members of the district, including many members of our Board of Education, but as well to be able to offer vital perspectives that can inform district planning and to engage in some live dialogue as much as Zoom will permit it. To do this, I'm going to sort of take over your computer screens. We've got a number of slides that we'd like to be able to share with you. I'll describe the format of the evening and then introduce a lot of the important folks who have joined us this evening. So if you'll give me just one moment, I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see after I do that some slides. There we go. And you should be looking at right now the title slide for our African American Affinity Town Hall. We're really happy to be able to both host this event and to partner with the Parents and Children of African Descent, who have done a lot of work both with members of the staff and with the community to get out word, to give shape to tonight's event, and to give us guidance about the kinds of topics that we should be prepared to address and to hear about as we go through the next 90 minutes. Before we get started, before doing anything at all, please know that tonight's conversation is not a one and only event. We've been working with Leslie Bowling Dyer, currently serving as chair of the parent PCAD. And we've already set a tentative date for our next online conversation to be Tuesday, June 16th at 6:30. We'll make sure that that's going to work for all of the members of our team. If we change the date, we'll be sure to let you know that, and we'll do everything we can to get out word. So please know that this isn't a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We'll continue to stay engaged in just the same format to be sure that there's a space that all of us can share together to be able to talk about important issues in the district. Tonight's conversation is intended to do these things, and we hope that we're successful as we go through the night's activities. We plan to share some information, but not too much, about the impending budget cuts. We know right now that there will be a 10% reduction in funding from the state. We'll also talk about distance learning and about the achievement gap or opportunity gap that continues to affect Black students even in this era of distance learning. We hope as well to collect key feedback from all of the participants this evening that can play a core element in planning for the district. And to do that, we're using an app that's called Thought Exchange. It's kind of a fun survey tool that lets us all respond directly to survey questions and then actually look at the results sort of live together as we're watching. We'll use that tool and then we'll have a chance to talk about what comes back after everyone on the call has been able to use it. As well, we'll talk a little bit about the process for involving the Black community in decision-making, as well the process for follow-up. Again, we'll have a meeting on June 16th. And then this is also intended to be an opportunity to encourage Black students and their families to advocate for their perspectives, which are important here in Berkeley. It's a lot to try and accomplish in an evening, and we hope that we do a good job. We're joined tonight by a number of members of the Berkeley Unified team. They include 3 of our board directors. We're joined by board president Judy Appel, and very happy to have her here. Director Khadija Brown is also with us. And we're expecting Director Beatrice Leva Cutler, who as of a couple minutes ago, I don't think had yet logged in.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. What wonderful. Hi, Beatrice. And then we're joined as well by a number of members from our staff. That includes myself, Brent Stevens, Bajay Tiara, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services. Anne-Marie Caligari is our Supervisor for the Office of Family Engagement and Equity. Kamar O'Gwyn is the Manager of the African American Success Project. Natasha Beery is the Director of our Berkeley School Excellence Program and Community Relations. Trish McDermott, while not a speaker tonight, is also on the call. She's our Public Information Officer. And then behind the scenes is Jay Nitschke, who is our Director of Technology, also listening in carefully to our dialogue. We're very appreciative of the partnership of the Parents of Children of African Descent for serving both as thought partners, as advocates, and then as sort of town criers to get out the word about tonight's meeting. So they are Babalo Akwanele, Carol Perez, and Leslie Bowling Dyer. Thank you to all of you. And then there are members of the PCAD committee who have as well, I think, taken part in helping give shape to this evening. Again, just to point out a couple of our folks, Anne-Marie Caligari, if you haven't had a chance to meet her, is the supervisor of our Office of Family Engagement and Equity. She'll be speaking as we go through questions. Kamar O'Gwyn, again, the manager of the African American Success Project. I point him out here just so that you know about him if you haven't had a chance to meet him yet. Here's our agenda for the evening. We're beginning right now with some welcome and opening remarks. Then we'll jump into a quick overview of the planning for the 2020-2021 school year. We'll as well provide some information that's pertinent to Black and African American families about the district. We'll do some questions and then we'll have these thought exchange activities. Finally, towards the end of our evening together, we'll talk about next steps and then offer some closing remarks. With a very brief message, first like to invite Judy Appel just to say hello. Judy, we're going to try to keep this just a 1 quick minute apiece so we can jump into some of our questions from audience members.
Thank you, Superintendent Stevens. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine.
You know, I will take under a minute. I just wanted to tell you all that I'm very much looking forward to this evening. And, you know, since we already have heard that distance learning has been exacerbating existing inequities, educational inequities. You know, I think it's so important that we strategize for the fall. You know, keeping that front and center in our minds. So I'm really look forward to hearing what you all have to say tonight, and thanks for being so committed to participating in planning.
Thank you, President Appel. We're also joined this evening by Director Khadija Brown. Director Brown, you want to say a couple words?
Hi, good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to say thank you to the caregivers who are on this call with us this evening. Many of you have switched roles from just being parents or grandparents to now being teachers, and I know firsthand that isn't a really easy job. So thank you for hanging in there with us during this pandemic and during these unprecedented times. And also thank you for being here this evening. Your being here is a testament that advocacy isn't just for the folks in your own home, but for all students who need a collective community behind them. My role here tonight as a board member, our roles as board members tonight is to listen to you. And we're here to listen to your feedback that's both, just like in the last town hall meeting, that's both positive and also constructive in an effort to help us get things right as a district. And you know, the achievement gap in our district has been an issue for far too long. But I'm excited that tonight's conversation and the conversations in the future will be intentional conversations that'll help us to push us in the right direction and help us be proactive really in our planning. Historically, Black and African American children have been impacted by the race and class inequalities in education, and adding a pandemic to that has a potential to widen the achievement gap. But tonight I'm happy to be a part of the conversation and be in the room with folks who say not on our watch and not in our district. So thank you, Superintendent, for allowing us as board members to be a part of this conversation. I welcome everyone's feedback, so thank you.
Thank you, Director Brown. And we're also joined this evening by Director Beatrice Leyva-Cutler. Director Cutler.
Thank you. I want to thank all the families. Let me see.
Well, Beatrice, we just lost you.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Just wanted to thank all the families and staff that are here and present. As my board members had said, this is a real great opportunity to be able to listen, to hear, I know that there's many thoughts out there of how we can improve our schools and make them accessible to all of our students at every time, whether they're distant learning or in the classroom. So I appreciate the time the parents are taking and our staff are taking to come to this meeting, and we will mirror this meeting again on Thursday night with our Latino family. So I think there's places in here that we will find agreement where we need to improve, and I look forward to that conversation with you and to listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Director Beatrice Leyva-Cutler. So let's jump into a little bit of discussion very, very quickly about the coming fall, the coming school year. I'd like to first just share some of the assumptions that we're making about the school year. We're in this sort of awkward, difficult, sort of unwanted position of not really knowing enough to say exactly what the fall is going to bring all of us. There's so many things changing on a day-to-day basis that by the time we get to August, we may be yet again surprised by the circumstances in our community. But we are making some assumptions, and I'd like to share those assumptions with you now. So the assumptions I'm sharing with you will go before the Board of Education tomorrow, and so it's an important caveat to recognize that the board will both deliberate on and potentially approve these planning assumptions tomorrow. Here's our current best thinking about what the fall will look like, or at least some of it. First, we do imagine that COVID-19 will continue to be present in Berkeley. We have no reason to think that there will be an end to the pandemic by the time we return to school. We're also assuming for next year, because of the ongoing presence of COVID-19, that distance learning will form the core of our educational program for all students at all grades. And it's for this reason that we're asking our educators and principals, parent committees, to focus on reflecting on and then improving the distance learning experience for next year. We know that we've got lots of room to improve. We take that seriously. It's also true, though, that next year that on-campus learning is likely to be permitted, except that it's probably going to be limited and interrupted. We're learning right now that we will likely have to do social distancing with students at school. There very likely will be periods of intermittent school closure. We may suffer from supply shortages like masks or cleaning equipment. And there may occasionally be a lack of public confidence about the overall safety in Berkeley. And then, of course, there may be illness, which will impact the presence both of teachers and students. And it's for this reason that we're thinking about using our campuses as a supplement to distance learning, but that we're really thinking that it will be a blend of both computer-based instruction and in-person on-campus instruction. That will be likely the core of our program. 2 weeks ago on May 13th, we invited over 1,300 folks from Berkeley to respond to an interview question. This question had to do with how folks would like to see distance learning improved. It's really telling that the word screen shows up in the middle. It was the most commonly offered suggestion. And what that means is that folks would like to see an overall reduction in screen time. People are concerned about the impact of spending too much time on computers, both for young people and for adults. And then there was a similar set of concerns about increasing interaction between students, increasing students' connection both to themselves and to their teachers, having a better schedule to go off of, more predictability, and then thinking about things like projects as part of the coming distance learning. To talk very briefly about the budget, we are also trying to plan for this new school year while accounting for huge reductions in state funding for public schools. What we know right now, this chart tells us, right down here at the bottom right-hand corner, that we have over $7 million to find in order to balance our budget. That means $7 million in cuts to services in order to balance the budget for next year. This is a monumental challenge, and it's one that we'll have to take on as we also try to redesign the school year for distance learning and for on-campus learning. Some of the ideas that we're right now playing with in terms of balancing the budget have to do with closing some unfilled positions that we haven't been able to hire for, making some additional contributions from our Berkeley School Excellence program to what's called the teacher template. It doesn't really have any real impact on class size, but it helps us move money from BSEP over to the general fund. We're talking as well about looking at savings related to school closures, including possibly the reduction of our transportation program, or even potentially if we just can't put kids on a bus because of social distancing, it's temporary elimination. We'll be looking at things like savings on electricity and garbage, recycling collection, as well as canceling all of our professional development that's not related to COVID-19. Some additional ideas that we might use for balancing the budget include trying to adjust some existing programs based on distance learning. We might as well be looking at eliminating extended hours for some or all staff. We may look at staff furloughs, which means that some days during the school year that no BUSD employee would be paid for. And then finally, a complete or a partial hiring freeze. Also some news that I think is of interest to many families. We are looking to expand our summer programming. This will take place in a sort of number of different ways, including for students in transitional kindergarten through 5th grade, 2 sessions, a 4-week session and a 3-week session. Here on the slide deck, you can see the dates that we're thinking about. Then we're right now recruiting teachers to see how many student seats we can offer. This is information about an expanded middle school learning opportunity that will run on a 4-week program. It will include opportunities for students to come together for math and English in both 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, as well as a class for English language learners. We do know at this point that we will be offering all of our summer programming through the computer because we're right now not permitted to bring students onto campus over the course of the summer. And then at high school, we'll be offering an expanded 6-week program instead of a 4-week program. This is 2 programs: credit recovery for students who would like to make up credits for a class in which they earned a D or an F, and then a senior diploma program, which can be recommended to current seniors and will permit seniors to earn up to 15 credits to be applied towards graduation. So I think it's at this point, if I am correct, that we pause and that we take some questions. I'm hoping that maybe one of our sort of co-facilitators can make sure that I'm correct about that. Is that, I'm looking maybe to Natasha or Kamara to help me know that I'm right about that.
Yes, hi, it's Natasha. So my understanding is that, and actually Leslie, please jump in, that what we are going to do next is, I think Leslie or someone from PCAD is going to orient us to the process for asking questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Excellent. So I'm going to move back to my slides because I do have a slide for what will come next. And Leslie, would you like to walk us through these next steps?
Certainly. So we will have a PCAD representative who will offer a question to the BUSD staff panel, and then they will have about 2 minutes to answer that question. And then there will be a moment for the participants on this call to provide their questions, concerns, what resonates with you, what wasn't covered in that particular area that we are talking about. You will have an opportunity to put your thoughts into the thought exchange. There will be a prompt that will be on the screen that will orient you. We will be addressing issues that have to do with distance learning, the budget, and then Black student performance and outcomes. So, after we've had the thought exchange, the question that comes to the top will be posed again to our BUSD staff. And then following that, there will be an opportunity for some of our, particularly our K through 8, we've tried to identify some K through 8 parents who can offer a live question. So this is not a scripted question to the staff, BUSD staff. So I believe the first person, hopefully Carol, is available to pose our first question.
Good evening, everyone. So PCAD members would like to know, what is the plan to address engagement disparities observed for Black students in the distance learning engagement data?
Sorry for that delay. Yeah, I appreciate this question. So one of the things that we've been closely keeping track of as we've started distance learning, closing schools and having students at home, is the way that students are engaging. We've never done this before as a public school district, and we're learning a lot about what is working and not working for our students. We are seeing that as we look at information about who's participating, that some differences are emerging, and it appears that right now those differences are affecting African-American students, students with disabilities, and English language learners. And by that I mean that they, while participating, are being reported by their teachers as not participating at quite the same level. That's not to say that all... Sorry. Sorry about that, got a little bit of feedback. That's not to say that all students in the group aren't participating, but we're seeing differences. So many of the efforts that are taking place in the district and that will continue to take place have to do with both teachers' active outreach to families and schools' active outreach as well. It's always been my belief that it's the relationship with the teacher, the trust that is developed between students, teachers, and families is the single most important asset that our young people have. And so we look to our teachers to be alert to these issues about participation. We look as well for teachers to be able to communicate directly with counselors, with what we call intervention teachers and principals, to reach out to families to engage in problem solving. We've also, over the course of the last 2 weeks, looked really heavily to our Office of Family Equity and Engagement to do very specific and targeted outreach to many families, including African-American families, who for a variety of reasons are struggling to get connected. This month as well, we just launched what we're calling a tech wellness program. The idea is to have volunteers reaching out to the over 2,500 families who have borrowed a Chromebook from us, and to lend a personal hand to any kind of technology issues that might be taking place. We're also taking cues from a variety of places around the district that are experiencing success, including some of our own schools that have lower rates, and then some of our programs, like the Emoja program, that are taking a very personal approach to supporting African-American families and students to be engaged in distance learning. All of that is to say that we've got work to do to write a quality plan for next year, and the feedback that we get from tonight and from other locations will be important to think about how we get better moving into the future.
Great. And then on the next slide, we'll have a thought exchange parallel to the question that you just answered, Dr. Stevens. If you would go to the next slide, and then, or actually I'll share, I could share my screen. That's fine. And let me do that. And what we're going to do is, for those of you who have been in a prior thought exchange, hopefully this looks somewhat familiar. What we would like to invite folks to do, and Leslie, please jump in if I'm explaining, I hope I'm explaining this correctly, that in parallel to the question that you were just asked, Dr. Stevens, now all attendees are invited to give their feedback on this question about distance learning. And I'm going to explain how to provide that feedback in just a moment. But here's the question. Given the likelihood that COVID-19 will still be present next fall, what measures can BUSD take to ensure Black African-American student engagement during distance learning? For example, what challenges have you noticed or faced during this distance learning period? And what suggestions might you have for improvement? So that's a question where PCAT has asked that everyone engage with, and we'll see what folks say. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to shift to another, whoops, I'm going to shift to another screen. And let me just see if I can get out of, second. I'm going to stop the share for a sec and switch over to my thought exchange screen. And what we do here is, can everybody see that? Oh, nope, you can't because I stopped sharing. 1 second. Here we go. Thank you for your patience as we try this in real time. So this screen is the way that you join into the thought exchange and provide your ideas. You can either hold, if you've got a smartphone handy, you can hold it up to the screen and as if you're taking a picture of this QR code thing, the black and white squares, and that should lead you to a website. The other way to do it really easily, if you happen to have a laptop in front of you or Chromebook, is to go to tejoin.com. And then it'll ask you for a code. And so this is the 9-digit code that takes you to this question, the very same question we looked at a moment ago. And I'm going to stop talking for a minute while everybody tries to get themselves there either by QR code or by URL. And when you do that, you'll be asked just 2 brief questions that just ask sort of who you are in terms of your relationship to the district. And then you'll be able to start providing your responses to this question. You might provide an idea or 2 about what BUSD should do. And once you've provided a response or 2, you'll start to see other people's responses. You'll go to start rating other people's responses. And this is a way to basically crowdsource ideas so that the top ideas of most interest will come up and we can have a discussion about that. So I'm going to stop talking now. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box. Questions about how to do this. Otherwise, add your questions directly to Thought Exchange.
Director Beery?
Yes.
Can you just remind us about how much time we have for each question, just to make sure that we're answering this in real time?
Thank you. I'm going to wait till I start seeing people logging in, and then I'll start that 4-minute timer that's up in. So everybody relax until you're actually in, and then we'll have 4 minutes, and I can always extend it if you need more time. The first one obviously often takes people some time to get in. So I won't start the timer until people are actually in and sharing thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Brown, Director Brown. Okay, I see there are already some thoughts, so I'm going to go ahead and set the timer. I'm going to give us a little more time. And this works best if you can try and rate about 20 thoughts from other people, 10 to 20. When you're rating the thoughts, you're simply indicating how much that idea resonates with you. Okay, we've just got 2 minutes left. Okay, just down to 1 minute, and then we'll be looking at folks' thoughts. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. And now, of course, my little computer version, I have it open on my both my laptop and on my phone. And the one on my phone, which I depend upon to run this thing, has just crashed. So 1 second. Sorry, it's probably the heat. I'm going to blame it on the heat. Okay, presenter mode and discover. Okay. And it is not coming up on the screen. Ah, here we go. Okay, here we go. All's well. I'm going to leave. By the way, people have asked, can the exchange stay open? Yes, it can. So we're going to try and keep this open for at least a week so that folks can continue to drop in their thoughts. And then we'll be able to get some sense of not just what folks are thinking in this meeting, but you know, people who may not have been able to join us could also contribute their thoughts. So here are some of the top thoughts. And I'll read them out loud and invite panelists to respond. So top thought here, rated 4.3, coordinate with parents and caregivers when students are on or off target. Frequent and personal texts and calls from educators. Collective support encourages continued participation. Would you like to respond, Dr. Stevens, or anyone else?
Yeah, why don't I just, I'll offer sort of a quick response, and then I welcome responses from panelists as well. And then as we go through these ideas, why don't we go to panelists first? Mm-hmm. This idea, I think, is a really strong one. Earlier in my sort of comments, I thought that sort of offered that I do think it's the communication with families, between teachers and families particularly, that sort of represents the single biggest asset that we have. When there's trust and communication, when there's teamwork, my sense is that things happen really well. I do understand that in some cases there have been some sort of strong areas of communication, in other places there haven't been. And one thing that we're trying to think about as we plan for the fall is how to improve parents' sort of sense on a week-by-week basis how their students are doing, and how they can take part, along with teachers, of course, in supporting students to participate in distance learning. So I'll pause there and welcome a comment from any other panelists who would like to offer perspective on this.
So hello everyone, this is, I'm Baja Tiara, Associate Soup of Ed Services, and what immediately came into my mind is this is a great opportunity. I think there are oftentimes there are formal venues of receiving feedback such as tonight, and also informal. So I think that being able to have a good balance of both formal and informal feedback so that we can hear what's working, what's not working, or what's best for your students, what are the challenges that they may be facing, or what can we be doing better to encourage motivation during these times.
And the next, I think we had talked about allowing about 5 minutes for this section to do some live response, so that there's time to move on to following questions. But please, the organizers should let me know how much time they'd like to spend on this section. We can always expand if need be. The second highest question was this one, about solving the connectivity issue, access to the internet, working devices, and adult call to problem solve. All kids need this.
I'll pause just to see if any of our other panelists want to jump in on this.
I would agree. I think one of the major issues, if we look at it from a national level, one of the major issues that is causing the achievement gap due to distance learning is the inability to be connected. It's not that our students don't want to get online and they don't want to learn. There are strong connectivity issues. And if you're in first or second grade, you or your parent may not know who to go to solve those issues. I think our district would benefit maybe from some sort of, just like there are office hours for teachers, there should also be office hours for tech support for students. I think we would benefit from that. And I haven't been seeing a lot of districts doing that right now, but it would be nice if we could be the leaders in that. So have some type of office hours, maybe on Mondays and Fridays or whatever days, where students know and their parents know you can come to this person, they'll be available between these hours, and you can they can answer all your questions in real time.
Okay, and then the next highest.
Hey, Natasha, I just caught a quick chat from Leslie that she's recommending that we go to, I think, live questions next.
Okay. So these are the top ones, and we'll be able to hold on to all of these as we move to the next live question, which is?
I believe that we should have somebody on deck to provide for a live question, and do we have Leanne Lewis with us?
Yes, it's Leanna, and
sorry, my apologies.
I'm here. I thought I was supposed to respond to what was given, but is this question up front here is the question?
No, it's actually, we're still on the first round of questioning was with regards to long distance learning. So if you had a question with regards, based off what you've heard, if you have a question regarding long distance learning, we would welcome that right now.
I got you. The other question on the screen threw me off.
That makes sense. Sorry about that.
Yes. So I think in terms of the distance learning, I think one question that I had and what we've heard so far, even starting this summer, is how we are thinking about engaging Black students in the summer. I think the summer, what you presented, Dr. Stevens, even with the summer resources available, I think those are still distance resources, right? They're not in person. And so if we know that we, only have a third of Black students participating now, and the summer is always challenging for families and students to engage, what are the specific initiatives and efforts to engage those students to make use of our summer resources?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two other potential programs. We're still working out the details. In addition to the programs that we're planning to offer, we've been in conversations with a couple of sort of local camps, including a science camp, to create a free tuition camp experience. This would be essentially to sort of make up or supplement what's going on in the summer. We're putting at the center of our recruitment efforts the school teams that know students best. What we've been asking school teams to do is make recommendations of students who would be participating both in our own programs and as we get the details worked out for these camps, to be recommended for these camps. We're asking our students to put forward names of students who may not have participated yet, and then to think across the sort of list of kids they know best, who would most benefit from the added learning experience, either our own or in one of these camps. So it's the reason we're not trying to do it centrally is because here in central office, we don't know students that well. We're asking our educators to reach out, and we are asking them specifically to think about African-American students who would benefit from either of these experiences. Again, it's that personal touch, somebody reaching out and recruiting directly to the family that we think will make a difference.
Great, thank you, and my apologies, Leanna. Thank you so much, and appreciate that. We really did want to make sure that our K-8 families had an opportunity to have their voices heard, and that is definitely a concern moving forward. So I think the next thing we're going to do is move to the next round of questioning that's going to be with regards to the budget cuts, the COVID-19 impact on the budget, and we'll have some discussion around that. And I believe that Deanna, you are going to be offering this question.
Hi. Sorry. In light of this, the state of California budget revise and cuts that will required by the through the district throughout the states. Sorry. What safeguards are in place to ensure the staff, programs, and service that support the Black African American students, families, and that they are not impacted?
Great, thank you, Deanna.
Sorry.
Thanks, Deanne, for that question. This is, as I shared before, we're facing what may feel like a sort of apocalyptic cut in our budget. 10% of our budget is roughly $7 million. It's going to take a lot of creativity to be able to find $7 million in savings and not impact programs, but that's in fact what we're really going to try hard to do. We've been just beginning to work as a team, the cabinet team, to identify some options related to cutting. And then we're talking sort of at great length about how to keep those cuts away from schools and programs. Right now, what I can say is that we don't anticipate that we will have to lay off teachers. Right now, I can say that we anticipate that don't think there will be cuts to any of the current programming that's designed to support African American students specifically. So programs, as an example, like the Emoja program at Longfellow, are right now not part of our discussion. And we intend, my intention is to keep it that way and to continue to look for options, again, that will leave our equity-oriented, very targeted programs intact for the coming school year. If it's possible, I do hope actually to expand some of that programming, even in the face of these cuts. The team is just beginning the conversations about whether or not we can, and it's a little too early to say right now whether or not the numbers will work out. But minimally, I want to make sure that we're maintaining level service, and if we can, that we're actually expanding those services, particularly to African American students. Oh, hey, Leslie, you're muted right now.
My apologies. Thank you so much. My apologies. So I think now, based off of both the question and your response, we're going to go into a thought exchange, and parents and caregivers who have concerns regarding the budget and this arena can begin to provide their ideas and thoughts about how BUSD can face this crisis with particularly with Black students in mind. So I'll turn over to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, so this is the next question, which is related to the one that was just asked, but I'm going to queue up the thought exchange with the QR code again. Can I just ask how people felt about the amount of time just to provide the ideas and rate the thoughts? Was that the right amount of time, 5 minutes? Would you like less? Would you like more? What would make sense?
I felt the 5 minutes was good.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. So here we go. I'm about to present the next question. Sorry, folks. I really need to be an octopus. Okay. We're going to go now to budget question. Here we go. All right. All right, here it is. Again, a different QR code and a different 9-digit number, and I won't start the 5-minute clock till I start to see some thoughts appearing. Thank you. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left, so please do start rating the thoughts of others so we can lift up a top thought to be shared. Okay, just 1 more minute. Please keep reading though. Okay, and looks like we have our top thought, which I'm going to try and get to pop up. Here we go. I'd love to see more enrichment programs offered to families of color, such as science camps. The data shows that these types of programs are more engaging than traditional summer school. They tend to be more successful in closing the gap.
I'll begin on this one and then welcome comments from other folks on the panel. Yeah, I agree completely with this idea. It's actually for this reason that we started to reach out a couple months ago to some local partners who offer exactly these kinds of camps. The idea is that these are folks who are used to working in the summer. They design high quality programs. Very often those programs charge tuition, and that tuition makes those programs inaccessible to many of our families. By partnering with these programs, we hope that we'll be able to offer free and reduced price tuition seats to be able to attend the very same programs as so many other students. We do know right now, because of the health officials' guidance, that summer programming will be distance learning, except for the children of families of essential workers. Which is sort of an interesting distinction they're making. Unfortunately, it sort of limits our ability as a school district to offer in-person camps, but our commitment is to continue forward and try to explore these partnerships.
Superintendent, can I add something to that?
Yeah, please do.
One of our parent advocates, Ms. Babbitt, during our meeting last week, during her comment, made a suggestion that these types of camps be culturally relevant. And I know you said you were going to go back to the drawing board. Is there an update on this specifically, or is there an update on a focus to make sure that these camps are culturally relevant?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I appreciated hearing it. I myself have not personally been able to follow up with some of these potential partners. These are folks who have been in sort of doing this for quite a long time, and several of the organizations are actually sort of offering professional development, not specifically on cultural relevance, but on sort of urban education, which includes often the theme of cultural relevance. I'll commit to making sure that we go back and explore this further with the 2 potential partners. Of course, these are third parties, they're not our programs, but it is still very important to us that this take place.
Absolutely, and I don't want to belabor the conversation so we can get to the next thought, but it's imperative to make sure that one of the biggest issues that we're experiencing right now is around engagement. So it's important to make sure that this camp is culturally relevant and engaging to students, to not just get them there, but to keep them there.
Can I add something quickly, please? Yes, I'd just like for you to know that.
Tell us again who you are as you're speaking.
Oh, my apologies. Ann Caligari with Family Engagement and Equity. Thank you all. I saw a lot of fours for family engagement. We have reached out to AREA, the African American Regional Educational Alliance, with their STEM Steps program. It's culturally appropriate. It's an amazing program that they usually do in person. And they are customizing a program for us. We have not had a chance to update you yet, Dr. Stevens, but I'm just really—
I'm hearing this, thank you.
So I'm just really glad to report that they are working with us and we're really looking forward to it. How many students so far? I'm not sure how many we'll be able to do, but it is an introduction and I would love to see the outcome of that program, but that is in the works.
Thank you, Ms. Caligari. That's good to hear. If we're in the hands of R.T. Fisher, we're in good hands.
So I do believe that the next step is to take a live question from one of our K through 8 parents and caregivers. And I believe that's going to be Casey Robinson. Is Casey with us? Okay.
I don't think I see Casey.
Okay.
I think Casey is in the participants and not as a panelist.
Ah, we didn't get her in. Okay. Apologies for that.
She currently has her hand raised. Is it possible to call her from her hand been raised if possible?
Oh,
yes, I can do it. I've got it. Hey, go for it, Casey.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Yay. Hello.
Yay. We made it happen virtually. Hi, greetings, everybody. My question is, we're doing a lot in terms of really trying to make it all work for all of our interested parties and kids and families. But I'd love for us to drill down a little bit more if we do have some specifics and thinking about academic accommodations or modifications that are currently being made or in the plans to be made for Black students. And so this is one way to reach out and get thoughts. Who else is on that group of thought leaders who are going to drive that conversation to say, here's what we see, this specific thing we are going to do in order to support our students to get over the finish line?
Yeah, it's Casey, I really appreciate this question. So I am going to sort of offer a little bit on the state of the district with respect to planning for all kids and then talk a little bit about how we're thinking about specific students. So it was only last week that I was able to ask principals to begin to work with their school communities on a plan for next year. If you were to press me on sort of elements of next year's plan, I simply couldn't answer. For all students in the district. And that is because so many things are unknown and we're trying to figure out the right mix of distance learning, safety precautions, the use of campus. So all of that sort of makes a response to any question about next year sort of doubly challenging. There were, though, a number of lines of work that we were quite active on before COVID-19 hit. And it's really sort of getting back to those lines of work and putting them into our COVID-19 plan that I feel is really sort of at the center of our work. So we had really been actively engaged, for example, in expanding the African American Success Project for the coming school year, actively involved in this sort of conversation about expanding the Office of Family Equity Engagement. Both of these are explicit and targeted strategies to impact African American students and their families positively. We had also begun conversations about introducing the culturally relevant pedagogy into our math professional development. And so we'd had plans put in place that would have been applied next year. Those particular plans, of course, are upside down right now because of what's going on. What we have to do is not only redesign the district for next year, but resurrect and then protect those very plans that we had been working on up to the point of the school closures. So it's daunting, to say the least, sort of where we are as a district, and yet we have enough great ideas in our midst to be able to put them right into our plan as we develop it. And why don't I pause there and welcome any comments from other panelists. It's like we've got a shy group, Leslie. I tease.
Yes, yes. Well, we do have two more rather important questions. So where the format will change just a tad, in that we're going to do, in round 3, there's not just one question, but there are 2 questions, and we will actually hear a response from the panelists after each question before we go into the thought exchange. And so hopefully our PCAD representatives are on deck. So the first person who's going to be posing a question is Babalwa Corneli for this section. Babalwa, are you with us?
I'm here.
Great.
Okay, so the question that is lifted is, what is VSD's plan to address disparities expressed in the over-identification of African-American Black students for special education services?
Thanks for the question, Babalawa. For folks who are following district news, you'll likely know that it was a couple of months ago, a few months before the school closures, that BUSD was identified as being significantly disproportionate in exactly this area. What that means essentially is that more African-American students were being identified for special education services than one would expect. Just given that sort of percentage of the population that African-American students make up. This has happened to Berkeley before. It was back in 2015 or 2014 that there was also a similar designation. That had happened only about 2 months prior to school's closure, and we had just begun to assemble teams, not sort of technical assistance teams with some folks, in fact, whose names I see on this call, but as well members of our staff to begin thinking about exactly this issue. You know, sort of fundamental to this problem of over-identification is the provision of effective services before identification is even needed. This means first and foremost that there's a strong relationship between the teacher and an African-American student and his or her family. It means that if there is a learning issue, that the teacher is able to access resources for the classroom. And then it means that there's a team on the school site that can take effective action both to work with the family, provide intervention services to the student, all before there's ever a referral to special education. And at the heart of a coming plan, which we haven't written yet, will be a strong attention to exactly these things. What's happening in classrooms, what's the teacher's level of training, and then what does the support and intervention services look like before special education is ever thought of. So right now, we will both write our distance learning plan for the district and then reconvene again to consider this really important question about significant disproportionality.
Is there any other panelists that wanted to respond to that question?
If I could, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. And make sure you say who you are as you speak, please.
Okay, Bajay Tiara. So what I can speak to is a timeline, as superintendent has previously mentioned, that to answer this question is both multifaceted and also on a timeline. As being designated as significantly disproportionate, we are required to come up with what is called a CSACE plan, Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan. And we are at the beginning stages, which I will call phase 1. And in that phase, we are defining who our central office leadership team will be, and that will be a cross-departmental team of senior leaders, including senior leadership from the superintendent's office, as well as leaders from school sites, including teachers, principals, and classified staff, and an extension to our community. We will have parent representatives, caregivers, and any key leadership agencies out there who are supporting our students. This team will come together, and phase 2 which I'll call a root cause analysis. We'll look at the data, we'll look at what the data is telling us, and also an opportunity for families to, one of those formal convenings, to hear about your experiences and advocacy of your students and your children. From that, we'll look at what I'll call phase 3, a plan for improvement. This plan, the CSACE plan, must be submitted to the state, I believe in late September, early October. And once we complete our root cause analysis, then we'll look at programming. What are some policies that are impeding the success of our students? What are program needs so that students can be successful? And then from there, we go into the final phase of implementing, evaluating, and sustaining. And during this time, we will have regular meetings with our stakeholder groups, providing updates, progress monitoring, and then looking at what's working, what's not working, where can we do course correction.
Okay, great.
I'd like to add something in terms of,
yes.
This is Beatriz Leiva Cutler, board member. I work in early childhood, and one of the things that we have been finding that really helps a family and a student is the early intervention and prevention of students' needs in the early childhood. And so that's one place where I think Berkeley can improve upon in terms of both the outreach and the services for children 3 to 5 years old, so that we're giving them the appropriate work and support that they need so that the transition is easier for families from kindergarten to first grade. And there's no lag in services. So I think, there is additional funding with all the cuts. There is additional funding that'll be coming to early childhood in special ed. And that's one place I think that we can certainly improve upon in terms of early intervention and identification to support families. And perhaps if we catch it early on, we can support the student even further.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna now lead us to our next question that's being posed. And that's going to be coming from Kim Walton. Kim, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, here we go. Can BUSD commit to developing a multi-year roadmap for Black African-American academic progress prior to the start of school year 2021?
What a great question. Before schools closed and the world turned upside down, in fact, this was exactly the work that we were engaged in. We were well on our way to finding an expert community partner to be able to both do sort of stakeholder engagement, but also to help us write what we were going to call an African American Success Framework. A set of strategies implemented comprehensively across our schools that research says will lead to better improved outcomes for African American students. In the last 2 months, just to be completely transparent with the world upside down, virtually all of the work that we have been trying to complete for the end of this school year has been put on pause. And we have been in emergency mode, both trying to design something called distance learning and plan for the next year to deal with these large budget cuts. My commitment is once we get through the budget cutting process, once we get through the planning process for the district for next year, to try and return to a number of the lines of important work that we've been trying to develop prior to school closures. And the centerpiece for me, really the single most important priority for me, was the creation of this framework and then funding that framework, actually putting resources into the variety of strategies that would be named in that framework. So while we're paused in the middle of this emergency, I beg everybody's patience, but do know that just because we're in the middle of emergency that our priorities have not changed.
Great, great, thank you. We want to go ahead and move to the next thought, the last of thought exchange, and allow parents and caregivers, community members to provide their thoughts. And it can be with regard to either the previous 2 questions, one that asked questions regarding the framework for, or a roadmap. Can the district commit to something that looks at student success, or also addressing issues with regards to special education? So I would turn it over right now to you, Natasha.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And yes, as you mentioned, although we do have this next thought exchange queued up with a question about, in general, about academic progress, you can also make comments with regard to special ed. And again, I'm going to put 5 minutes on once people have engaged. All right, here we go. And, first best thought, and then please rate. Okay, we're at 2 minutes. And please do keep rating. Looks like we've got 40 thoughts. Just one more minute. Okay, wow, this group got to over 1,000 ratings and 60 thoughts, and let's see what thought rose up. And come on, sometimes you got to talk to it. All right, the very top thought: prioritize the hiring of African American teachers and staff. Students, schools, and communities need to see African American leaders in the BUSD system. Reflections.
Yes, and amen. This is a really important priority for the district. You know, we have, of course, many African American faculty, staff, rather, here in Berkeley Unified. Among our teachers, though, that rate drops a great deal. The impact on students, in my view, is profound, and that's not only for African American students, but that's for all students. Who benefit greatly from having an African American teacher, both because they learn a valuable perspective, and because it helps to break, so I think, well ingrained stereotypes about the accomplishments of so many people in this country. We have a number of things going on right now that includes actually increased support for recruiting and retaining African American teachers and teachers of color that's made possible through the passage of the new Berkeley Educator Recruitment and Retention Act. This was approved by Berkeley voters in March and is going to permit us actually to expand programming to support not only retention efforts like a Leaders of Color network and Teachers of Color network, but also to begin more targeted recruitment from historically Black colleges and universities to get out on the road and find Black folks who want to come to work here in Berkeley to support our students. So I agree completely. This is a very high priority for our district.
Great. So for the sake of time, we're going to need to pivot to our live question at this point. I do want to remind people that this is not the last time that we will have an opportunity to engage. So the more thoughts that you realize you have, please write them down, add them to the thought exchange, and be using those to catapult us into our next opportunity for engagement. So at this time, I'm going to ask, again, one of our K-8 parents, I believe we have middle school parent, Montrella Wilson. Montrella, are you on? Do we have her? Is she raising her hand as a participant anywhere?
I see Monica. Not someone named Montrella.
Okay. I think with that, we will go to another of our live questioners. And again, we're going to go back to Babalawa Kwaneli. Oh, did you find her?
There is someone logged in as Healthy Black Families. I don't know who that is. Whether that's Montrella, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
So how about Babalawa? That might be Babalawa who's logged in as Healthy Black Families.
Let me try unmuting that person and, oops. Someone else is trying to do it. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Healthy Black Families.
Is that Babalawa?
No, it's Ayana, Mama Ayana. Good evening, everyone. Didn't expect to be called on.
Oh, I think I see Babalawa. Okay.
So,
did you have a question with regards to the areas that we just covered?
yes,
Okay.
actually.
Can you pose your question, please?
My question is, is there a possibility to make plans to train African American parents as classroom assistants so that we can not only get parents and caregivers more involved, but we can also increase the educational knowledge base of our community, which will then spread into our families and increase the learning levels of our children that the parents are engaging with and the families are engaging with. So the question is, can we hire, create a training program or an internship program for African American parents with children or caregivers with children in Berkeley so that they can assist our teachers in culturally relevant and tactics and best practices, as well as engage with our children, and then also take that knowledge back to the community.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I love this question, Mama Yana, and thank you for asking it. This is something that sort of goes back to my roots as a teacher. When I was a teacher at Lockwood School in Oakland, I used to do ESL classes for parents almost every night of the week, and felt that it was really working with families that I could best serve students. We've here in Berkeley been sort of engaged just over the last month or so in trying to design exactly the kind of program that you're talking about that would build some staff capacity to work directly with families, offer families trainings, really for the purpose of being able to work in schools to influence the direction of those schools. So much of the work of the Office of Family Equity and Engagement, Anne Marie Caligari's office, is centered on exactly that kind of thing, working with families who then feel empowered to be more effective with their teachers and with their principals, and ultimately to help the school take a positive shape on behalf of their kids. So please do know that we're working on this, not only what we've got going, but trying to work on expanding that program as well.
Great. And then I think Babalwa, you are with us?
Yes.
Okay, and can you pose your question, please? And yours is a live question, so.
Right, and I'm sort of looking at many of the other questions that are in the chat, and I think it goes along with the piece around cultural responsiveness training for teachers. And I know some of those things were put on hold due to the the COVID and things like that. What's the plan for sort of revamping that, bringing it back, looking at cultural responsive training for teachers and staff as well? And along with Mama Ayana's question around involving the community more, the parents and the family, those who have strong relationships with many of our youth, to help improve the quality of their education, and also to help the teachers to develop a stronger relationship with the students. As we know, with African American families, relationships are critical. It's critical. And that, particularly in the high school, has been strained. So what's the plan of really folding that back in and bringing it back together and adding in the community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, Babalo, we're kind of working hard right now to develop a plan for the whole district, and we hope to be able to sort of articulate what that's going to look like probably by the end of June. There's two things going on right now that I think are really getting in the way. I agree completely that it's the relationships. When an African American student can both find common cause with an educator and feel trust, both feel trusted and trust that the educator holds that student's best interest at heart. It's so hard through a computer screen to convey care and to convey concern for the individual. So I've been challenging principals to really think about the use of our campuses, which we know will be limited, from an equity perspective first. Who do we most need to positively benefit through presence on campus and through the restoration of these in-person relationships? And then after we've taken care of equity concerns, to think about what space is left on our campus. So I'm hoping that principals will return a plan that takes these equity principles seriously and begins to think about our limited campus use next year, specifically to privileged students who really need the in-person sense of care. The other thing that we now need to improve is that, once we've sort of spent all this time teaching everybody the technical components of Zoom, we now need to return to our value of infusing culturally responsive pedagogy into our practices.
Right.
And that there's lots of smart folks in educational services who are wanting to turn away from just teaching teachers what button to press and to help them think about how to use this technology to connect all students, and particularly to students who are right now disconnected.
Great. So we only have a few minutes left. Thank you so much. We want to now take some time to actually think about what happens next and closing thoughts. So I think the BUSD
Thank you.
folks are up next.
Yeah, so I'm just on behalf of everybody who's here, our board members, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and then all of our staff members. I just can't express how much appreciation I have for all the folks who have spent the evening with us. At one point, I think there were 132 of you. And so to me, that's sort of a word of congratulations is in order to the community. We are planning to work with PCAD to finalize a date that we'll be able to come back together in mid-June. The reason we'd love to pull the group back together in mid-June is that we would very concretely like to share with this group proposals that for the budget that will have implications for the coming school year. By mid-June, we will have started to convene some of our budget advisory committees again. We will likely be in between board meetings, and it's a great opportunity as we sort of contemplate the feedback of the board to also contemplate the feedback of this group. And that's why we'd like to bring you all back together for another meeting. We don't have any other meetings scheduled. We'll obviously sort of pull away in July to take a breath, all of us. And then what you can count on is ongoing commitments to partner both with PCAD and other organizations in the community that represent African American students, families, and their interests, and to find more meaningful ways, deeper ways to build that perspective into the fabric of the district's plans. So on behalf of the district, I'm just appreciative of the patience, the goodwill, the generosity of all of our families for hanging in there through this really challenging 2 months. Berkeley should feel proud as a community, and we're going to do everything we can to make you feel proud of us as we move into the school year. So Leslie, thanks to you, thanks to my colleagues, and thanks to all of our participants.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone. And I do want to, at this point in our agenda, we did want an opportunity for PCAD to offer some recommendations to the community. At this point, we are in a situation, I think, as you've said, Brent, that as Dr. Stevens, that we're facing a lot of unknowns. And I think, unfortunately, we all are inheriting a history in which, even with the best of intentions, when Black voices aren't at the table, when we aren't in the room, our perspectives get lost. Lived experience of what it means to be Black is not something that can be written down and exported. We need to show up. And so with that in mind, one of the goals of this meeting was actually to, one, help to make all of the community members aware of the literally tens of thousands of considerations and questions that need to be asked. I really appreciated when Casey Robinson asked the question, who are the thought leaders? And those thoughts have to be rooted, in my thinking, in the lived experience of African Americans. And so as the decisions are going forward, it's really important that we're at the table. I'm going to encourage everybody in the community, please go and talk to our board members, let them know what you're thinking, because it is imperative that our presence continue to remind them of the issues that we are struggling with. Also, join your site's African American Affinity group, if it has one. If it doesn't, start one. We are going to need to remain organized and coordinated. And if we are not at the table, I will tell you, this is one of our PCAD parents, is if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And so we've got to show up, y'all. And I am also really advocating that we we have people who are willing, when we get seats at the table, that we have bodies to sit in those seats. So we need you all to show up we are in for a very bumpy ride, and we do not want our students. I feel so much, and I hate doing this to you all. You all are trying to express such goodwill and have such excellent thoughts and intentions, and I hear that. And I am so empathetic to the things that our staff and our superintendent, that all of you are having to manage. But the reality is I'm far more sympathetic for what education, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, 11th grade means to a Black student in America. They don't get a do-over. And if this is setting the trajectory for the rest of their lives. And if they are going to have any quality of life, as hard as this is, we've got to be at the table. We've got to be able to help you all make decisions, and because they are going to have such a tremendous impact on our students. So I am calling on the community. We want your partnership. PCAD was part of the lead organizer, but we want to see other organizations and other community members involved. This was a quick turnaround. We are looking for your partnership. You can, I will provide a way for you to get in contact with us. You can also get in touch with, Ann Caligari in the OFI office. You can get in touch with Kamaro Gwynn with the African American Success Project. Reach out to those folks, reach out to your OFI staff and say, hey, I want to help do this. Help us put on the next town hall. We are on a high learning curve to figure this out, and we need your presence, we need your ideas, we need your perspective on what happens on your site. You know it better than anybody else. So please, everybody, this is an opportunity for us to mobilize. And I think, as Director Brown said, not on our watch. We are not going to let anything happen to our kids on our watch. So please join us. It's in partnership, but we realize we have to bring the voice and the lived experience to the table. And it is then within our BUSD staff to figure out how to engage those needs. So thank you so much, everyone. I am grateful for your partnership, and I am looking forward to this really being the springboard into where this process is going to lead us through these uncertain times. Thank you. And I think that's it.
Great.
Do you have anything else? Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.